As we get a bit more feed into, say, September, these prices are going to lift. They're thinking, well, they've got that their grass is going to grow. If you don't come in and buy now, well, by the middle of September, there'll be that deer you won't be able to buy. Well, a lot of these people today can't even buy. They let me go, I can buy.
The season looked pretty good, and I think people thought that we possibly couldn't, get another really bad drought year.
Now we've gone into the spring and it's reverted back to the previous 5, so. We can see there, that's how the season has been turned dry. That's the original seed that I sowed there. Hasn't been wet enough for it to actually break it down, so. Well, that's just the dry husk of it. But it's done well considering.
There's already people baling up crops for hay. So it's not real good.
Like, I'm looking at the country, like every day basically I'm paid to sit in a glass box and watch the world. That's what you do. You're driving the tractor and you're looking at the weather and you're watching the storms and you're listening to the radio and stuff.
It all forms up and
looks good.
You might get a mill, might get 1 or 2 mills and just blows over. And
you just see it every single day. It just gets drier and drier and drier.
And then you hear that they've had, 300 or 400 mills on the coast and it just all washes away into the ocean. Well, it's a bit of a body blow when you can hear, you hear that, but that's just the way it goes. So.
I mean, when you work on your own, it can take a pretty big mental toll. There's a cost involved, really.
I didn't realise that I needed more input from other people, someone to steady me and say, oh, hang on, you're getting off the road a bit.
Spent a lot of years on the farm just in the company of just me and my parents and the dogs and the sheep and planting trees and
Getting pretty angry.
I'll just take it out on planting trees. I'll just go and plant trees.
Well, I plant it all though because I love nature so much. And I suppose I was like most other farmers in those days. We just didn't know enough about nature. But to show you how mad I was, outside I was always very shy. I just always felt uncomfortable in company, in being on my own and with people. A different feeling for me.
Nice ram, aren't you, Julian, eh? Eh? He was the top ram at the Almondvale sale. And his name is Julian. I like him because he's very quiet, and if you've got a quiet temperament in your animals, it makes them extra tender and tasty. Right, that's enough playtime. I'll leave him in there. And he's going to be the lure for the rest of the sheep. I like hanging around with people and stuff, but I also like the open space and the ability to do my own thing.
Randy, I suppose you run into your neighbours and that down the road and you pull up and have a yarn, or shows at sheep sale today, do that?
That's a big one, sheep sale.
Sheep sales, yeah, or...
It used to be harvest. Harvest was the time that you saw everybody at the silo.
But I'd be flat out knowing where they are now.
Yeah, that's been another consequence actually too.
We at the sale yards and we're sitting around waiting for 9 o'clock to come, and we're having a talk, and everything seems to be doom and gloom, and the good farmer is going to be someone who can still see hope and future in farming.
You always try to be optimistic, and you have to be in this game, but then again at times you have to face reality. Absolutely no moisture whatsoever in the ground, which makes it a bit hard, but it would have been only the sake of 15 or 20 mils would have made a crop out of it. But anyway, there's still a chance it might rain in the next week, 10 days or whatever, but after that, probably finished, I'd say. When it doesn't rain and things are looking bad, well, comes back to management again. You make management decisions.
When this drought came up, Dad was all for holding the cattle. He had hay, he'd be able to get me through and get himself through. Whereas I looked at myself, I had no hay, I said, no, I'm folding.
It's been tough. So
Everybody's like financially stressed out pretty well to the max and getting emotionally that way as well, so it's a matter of whether they want to hang on or they want to chuck it in. But
So I said, sorry, I'm going to sell. And I did.
it's something that I had to think about very carefully, and I used to think about for weeks. And then I'd just say to myself, well, I think it's the right thing to do.
Because we're still getting reasonable prices for our cattle, whereas other years, like I've seen pits where they've been shot and put in holes.
Next year, I don't think I'll have an income off the farm at all.
So I sold my 250 cows and their calves, and I knew I was going to have to get a job.
If you're carting water and feeding stock, or even just generally trying to run the farm as you normally do, but you're not making any money, yeah, I mean, you're sort of not left with a lot of alternatives. I mean, you can't go and get another job because you've already got one.
yeah, you sort of work, if you work 5 days off the farm, then you've got to do 5 days on the farm in 2 days.
Yeah.
And
it's
you
just
end up chasing your
extra.
tail and you don't...
And you see things falling down around you.
Well, that's right. You
Don't
put
think
the
that's
blinkers on
very
as you drive
healthy.
out to work and think, oh, I should be doing that, but yeah,
Yeah.
sort of know you can't, so...
Sheep escaping around.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the reasons probably that I went farming was the fact that if economics failed, I could always take a shovel and dig a garden. But now I realise that if the powers that be want me off the land, they can price me out. So even that became, I was totally vulnerable. And that every one of us has got to come to that point and realise we are totally vulnerable. So I realise now, and I'm able to accept there was a time years ago when I would sit on the top of Bathanga Gap and look at Albury-Wodonga and say there was no way in hell that I was ever going to go anywhere near a city.
People are starting to think, well, it's just too hard. So, you know, we may as well move and try and find some opportunities for our kids somewhere else. Because, I mean, I think that's what it comes down to too. You've got to look at, I mean, for yourself, I think you can battle on.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
But
yeah,
when you've got kids, I think you just think, well,
you've got to...
if this is the way it's going to be, if they're not going to be able to make a livelihood or to, you know, get the benefits or the chances that they need, then what's the point of being here? You need to move out.
And you can just hear that they're just
So
sort of
instead of
repeating.
you with Dad.
They've just been listening to what Dad's been saying, and the boys are actually really quite worried about it. You know, they go, "Oh, the clouds about, and it still hasn't rained," and and they're too young to even contemplate like
What it means.
what it actually means. That they probably won't be able to go on the farm, that they'll have to move on.
Well, some of them won't.
But they, you could see the days that it rains and they're really, really happy and quite hysterical about the fact that it's raining. So it must have been like a good mood at home when they come to school.
I suppose we all, you know, start tearing around like mad things when it does start raining on the roof and they know that, you know, something
Oh,
happening.
Tim can't sleep when it rains.
And
He's
actually,
up all night.
the other evening here we did have a little bit of a rain and my 2 girls were sitting out on 2 chairs with umbrellas over their head,
In the middle of the lawn.
shrilling with delight because here it was raining on these, you know, their umbrellas sitting out in there, but
They thought it was wonderful.
only there for about
First sign
5
of any
minutes.
rain, they've got the gum boots out. I think we've
Yeah.
worn out so many pairs of gum boots because they've perished through lack of rain and lack of
that's right,
moisture.
with the drought, I suppose you haven't got a lot of things that you know, doing a lot more maintenance things with fencing and things like that. But I've been spending some quality time with my daughter, so it's been good. He comes out in the ute and do a bit of droving and that sort of stuff,
Check
and
fences.
yeah, do a bit of fencing, and there's plenty of things you can do. Yeah, and she's had a ball, so it's been good.
Yeah, she does really enjoy it. People used to, you know, their 2-year-olds, all their babies would be on the floor of the tractor on a wheat bag and they'd just go around in the tractor and go to sleep. But I mean, well, not that we've had much call for the tractor.
No, that's right.
There's been enough rain, but yeah, you sort of can't do things like that anymore.
It's a big thing. I can remember my mum saying, you're training your kids up to be farmers. Are you going to be able to get them farms? And here I am, I'm 52. looking on the downhill side of life, and I'm sort of saying, well, where is it going to come from?
He shouldn't have pressure put on him to come onto farming. The reality is, it should be his decision. I'll be honest, yes, I'd be very happy, yes, if he was to come on farming with me.
I've told my boys that you must get a trade before you come back on the farm.
I guess what he's 14 now, I suppose, if he was, whether he goes on, does tertiary education, does a trade, whatever, look, well and good, I'm there to support him with that. If he wants to come onto the farm, look, so be it. I think if he was to come on, look, I certainly wouldn't, you couldn't force the financial burden or whatever onto him.
Both said, I just got to have something like, there's
a barrier.
Little patch out the back here, just behind where we're sitting now, like the green grass, so we always had the lawn nice and green, and we've got a 5 or 6 foot fence to the western side, and sit out the back and have a muck around with the kids and have a couple of beers or whatever, and a glass of wine or something, and
you
talk about things that happen with the kids and a bit of yarn, and you sort of, as if you are, just transported yourself to the, to a beer garden overlooking the ocean, or a park on the, in a nice riverside.
You've got to get away from it.
Yeah.
But I mean, farmers are like that anyway. I think that they live on where they work, and it's really hard for them to stop working. And when it's drought times and things aren't really positive, it's really nice for them to come in and kind of leave it at the gate. It just marks the boundary, I think, between life and what is effectively a farm. It's just a piece of land, really. Like, I think
well, it breaks down, it's only dirt. That's right. So
at some point, you have to be able to disconnect. Otherwise,
Yep.
it gets too painful.